Okay, this is your N7 grade 8 final test on multiplication and division of integers. We've covered all the outcomes in here. So this is your correction video. So if you did the test and you made mistakes, make sure you use this to help you learn from your mistakes. And if you're using it in 2021, hello future people, uh, use this as a study guide to help you prepare for your actual test. So the first question says determine the appropriate operation. Is it multiplication, division, subtraction, or addition? So 12, if I said 12 plus -4, that's not -3, so I can eliminate addition. 12 take away -4 would be 16, so I can eliminate that. 12 times -4, well, it's definitely not that. So the only operation it could be is division, because 12 divided by 4 is 3, opposite signs is negative. If I use that same mode of thinking for this one, I know it's not going to be multiplication, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, so it can't be division. Addition would be -6 plus -2 is -8, so it has to be subtraction, and it is, because if I remove negativity, I make it more positive. So I made -6 more positive by 2, and it's now -4. Question C, I know that addition won't work because that'll be a zero pair. Subtraction, -6 take away 6 would be -12. That doesn't work. But division, 6 divided by 6 is 1, and opposite signs is negative, works for that as well. And finally, for here, if I add a -2 and a +4 together, I get a +2. Ooh, wrong button. Question 2 says write the appropriate equation. So removing 6 groups of 3, removing 6 groups of 3, that's your expression. But it asks for an equation, which means we require an equal sign. And the product of -6 and -3 is -18. That was worth 2 points. 1 point for creating the proper expression, and 1 point for expressing the proper value or its equivalency. Question B says 9 groups of 5, so 9 groups of 5 is 45. 1 point for 9 times 5, and 1 point for 45. And finally, C, a lot of people had this right. It says write the appropriate equation, not translate it into words. This is adding 2 groups of -6. That's the expression that represents that repeated addition statement. And the sum, or the product, depending on how you look at it, is -12. Question 3 says using integer chips model each expression. Well, let me move this one over here because it's kind of in the way. I'll just move it over here. So if I think about this being adding 4 groups of -2, then when I model it, there's a -2. I'm going to add 1 group of -2, and through the miracle of infinite cloning, there's adding 2 groups of -2, 3 groups of -2, and adding 4 groups of -2. But a lot of people miss this part, and determine the product. So what is its value? It's equal to -8. 1 point for drawing the picture, 1 point for putting equals -8. This one would say removing 3 groups of -3. So if I pick my 0 pairs here, I don't know why I'm drawing this by hand without the infinite cloner. I feel so silly doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There is 0. This is a 0 comprised up of nothing. And if I remove negativity from something, I make it more positive. So if I remove 1 group of -3, I make this positive by 3. If I remove another group of -3, that makes it +3 more positive, if that makes sense. And if I move 1 more group of -3, I have achieved, by removing those negatives, I have made my number more positive by 9, and the product, therefore, is +9. Your next question, same thing I made. Why didn't I just bring this over here? Using integer chips, model it. So I have -6, so I'm going to draw -6. And I'm going to divide this into groups of -2. I'm going to divide it into a group of -2. I'm going to divide it into another group of -2. And I'm going to divide it into another group of -2. How many groups did I create? I created 3 groups. So determining the quotient, the answer is +3. And the picture is -6 divided into groups of -2 makes 3 groups. In the next one, if I had -8, it says divided by +4. So I can't divide that by +4, but I can divide it into four groups. One group, two groups, three groups, and four groups. And if I divide negative 8 into four groups, each group would be comprised of two negatives. Question number 5 says, using the number line provided, model each expression. So it says positive 3 times negative 2 is going to be adding three groups of negative 2. So I'm going to start here at 0. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8's over here. Adding one group of negative 2 is this. Adding another group of negative 2 and adding a third group of negative 2. I arrive at negative 6 when I add three groups of negative 2 on a number line. In the next one, I have negative 8. So I'm going to take 0 and negative 8 here. And I'm going to divide it into groups of negative 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's one group. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another group. How many groups did I create when I divided negative 8 into groups of negative 4? I created two groups, or positive 2. Right? This is a negative 6. Question 6 is the easiest question on the test. If you got anything wrong on this component of the test, I knew right away you were not going to have a great test, because your sign rules is the absolute minimum understanding of integer sense you have to take with you. If you are multiplying or dividing and the integers have the same sign, like this one and this one, your answer will always be positive. If you're multiplying or dividing and your signs are opposite, your answer will always be negative. So I could have had this as being the first question. If you made a mistake, you weren't allowed to do any of the rest of the test, right? That should have been my first question. If you don't pass this test question, you can't do any of the other questions. Question 7, using sign rules determine the product. So without even doing the actual math, these are different signs, so my answer will be negative. In B, the signs are the same, so my answer will be positive. In C, the signs are different, so my answer will be negative. And in D, the signs are the same, so my answer will be positive. Now I go back and simply do the products and quotients. 6 times 5 is 30, so my answer is negative 30. Positive 28, negative 25, and finally 12 divided by 12 is 1, so a positive 1. Questions 8, A, B, and C was the best question on the test because it was really easy to get 9 good marks. I gave you 1 point if you were able to tell me this is 9. I gave you 1 point if you were able to tell me this is positive 20. And I gave you 1 point if you knew that 20 was greater than 9. That's 3 points for that question. In question B, negative 10 divided by negative 5 is positive 2. I gave you 1 point for that. I gave you 1 point for knowing that this is 3. And I gave you 1 point for knowing that 3 is greater than 2. And finally, your last question. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. This was a tricky one for some people because negative 1 is greater than negative 4. Owing $1 is better for your bank account than owing $4. Question 9 is 4 BEDMAS questions. Determine the value of each expression. If there was any mistakes made too, a lot of people made mistakes in showing their work properly. They kind of had a hard time doing that. So the first question is negative 12. Take away the product of 4 and negative 3, which is negative 12 in brackets. If I'm removing negativity from something, I'm making it more positive. If you want to use the additive inverse, you get negative 12 plus positive 12 for the same answer. Either way, you get a final answer of 0. Next question, negative 8 plus any number divided by itself is 1. So any number with a negative divided by negative is a positive 1. Negative 8 plus a positive 1. Your sum is negative 7. And your next question, it's 20 multiplied by, what is 8 take away 10? Well, that's negative 2. If I had a nickel for everybody told me that 8 take away 10 was positive 2, I'd have a whole lot of nickels. Take away negative 10. Your second line would be to do your multiplication. 20 times negative 2, ladies and gentlemen, is negative 40. Some people just forgot the negative sign. And now that if I'm removing negativity from something, making it more positive by 10, my final answer is negative 30. And finally, question D. Let's make this a little bit bigger because it's a little tiny. Let's make it a little bit bigger. There we go. It says negative 2 plus 4 times negative 6, and all of it divided by negative 10. Now, if I rewrote that differently, I need to have square brackets here because I have to do that first, and then I'm going to divide by negative 10. Right? I have to first simplify all of the top part, and once I get an answer, I then take that and divide it by negative 10. So this is going to become negative 2 plus negative 24 divided by negative 10. This is going to become negative 26 divided by negative 10. And finally, 26 divided by 10, I move my decimal. I get 2.6. And since it's same signs, it's a positive 2.6. And my answer is positive 2.6. Now your next questions, your last three questions are story problems. In order to receive 4 points for these, there was 1 point for creating the correct expression, 2 points for simplifying it correctly, and I made you 1 point if you could just tell me what the answer means. What does that number represent? So a statement with a therefore symbol. So a plane ascends, that goes up at a rate of 3 meters a second for 10 seconds. And then descends at a rate of 10 meters per second for 10 seconds. Write an appropriate expression. So ascending like this will be 10 seconds of positive 3, right? Every second it goes up 3 meters, so over those 10 seconds it's going to go up 30 meters. And then or plus, I'm going to combine this part, which is the descending part, which is 10 seconds of going down 10 meters. It's not negative 10 times 10, it's 10 times negative 10. And that's the expression that represents how far I went down. If I simplify that, it's negative 100. And when I group all that together, I get negative 70. So that was worth 3 points for that. And then 1 point, all you had to do, therefore, it descended 70 meters over 10 seconds, right? That's all you needed for a point. It descended 70 meters. 4 points total for that question. Question 11 asks for the mean of these 5 temperatures. So we knew that the mean, or the average, if I write the formula, the mean is equal to the sum of the terms divided by the number of terms. I didn't have to write this formula down, but you had to know it. So if I say the sum of the terms, that means you add them all together. So negative 8 plus negative 9 plus negative 12 plus 4 plus 5. Those are 5 terms divided by the 5 terms. That is your formula that got you your full point. Writing that down. And then simplifying it, that's negative 20. Oh, hold on, before I do that, actually, oopsie daisy. If I take this, this, and this, those would be the first 3 I would cross it because that's essentially what? A 0 pair, right? So then all I have to do is add negative 8 and negative 12 to get negative 20 divided by 5, which gives me negative 4. Okay. Then your statement would say, therefore, the average temperature for the week, was negative 4 degrees Celsius. And your last question is about Earl. Earl starts with a balance of $80 in his bank account. So if I put his $80, his starting balance in the bank account, and I combine it with his withdrawals and his deposits, all of these together will end up telling me how much money he has in the bank. Now notice I am using addition for both, even when it's going to be taking money out, because adding a withdrawal is going to be a negative number, which is impacting it by decreasing it. So 1 point for this, saying 3 deposits, 3 withdrawals, of negative $10. That is 3 withdrawals of $10, and that's 5, isn't it? 5 withdrawals, $10 each, and 3 deposits of $25 each. So there's your expression that represents that mathematically. Using bedmass to simplify, I can simplify my multiplications. I can then group them all together. 80 and negative 50 is 30. And finally, 30 plus 75 is 105. There's the simplification of the expression. And therefore, Earl, in his richness, has 105 bones in his leg.